All right. Hello out there in the tubes of the internet, and welcome to another exciting edition of This Week in Space. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a what do I do? I don't know. I'm a content creator. I'm an internet personality. No, I'm an astrologer. I'm a tarot reader. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I do those things. I also do astrological coaching, and yeah, I like to come here each and every Monday, kind of close to 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Sort of been slipping now that it's summer, and whatever. But yeah, I like to come here around 11 a.m. Mountain Time every Monday to break down all the astro weather that is going down in space to kind of prepare people for the week ahead, give you a little information on what's coming up in the celestial spheres so you can navigate it with some skill and some grace. Hold on, I gotta plug in my device. Running a little behind today. Oh, there we go. Adjust that just a little bit. All right. And man, yeah, it's Monday again. That's wild. I feel like yesterday was Monday. But here we are doing this thing. Before I jump into the astrology of the week, I just want to let folks know a couple things that I got coming up. One big thing, I'm going to be co-facilitating a retreat in beautiful Epidavros, Greece, which is home to one of the oldest Asclepions, temple for dream work and healing. I'll be doing this right in time for the autumnal equinox, September 20th through 27th. We'll be talking about dreams, we'll be talking about magic, we'll be talking about water, we'll be visiting sacred sites, talking about the element of water in the birth chart, as well as how to use it magically, and water in a psychological context. I'll be co-facilitating this with the brilliant Sarah Janes, who is a mythologist and author and dream worker. I think there's one or two spots that are still available. So if you are interested, you can check out, excuse me, the website, themysteries.org, and go to the retreats page if you want to check that out. Also, one thing that I just wanted to mention is usually I do an astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report, which comes out sometimes weekly, and that can be found on SoundCloud. However, I'm trying to have a summer vacation and experience a little bit of a life and not just be tethered to my Apple products all the time. So that's on a bit of a hiatus, but hopefully I'll be getting back to that soon. So if you're missing your weekly Melee report, never you fear. I just paid for another year of SoundCloud, so I'm locked in, but I'm just taking a little bit of a break. So anyway, that being said, let's jump into the astrology of the week. We are looking at this week in space for August the 4th through August the 10th of 2025. Woo! All right, kicking it off on Wednesday, August the 6th, we have Mars, the planet of action and aggression, entering Libra, which is all about harmony, keeping the vibes right, balance. Mars does not have a great time here. Mars is in their detriment, meaning they are far from their home in somebody else's Airbnb. They don't have the resources for the stuff that they like so that they can do the things that they want to do. Mars shows up in Libra and is like, where is the gym? And Libra is like, right? Venus, the ruler of Libra, is like, oh, that looks gross. No, right? Mars is like, where's all the weapons? And Venus is like, nah, bro, like we have artwork here. Please don't get your bloodstained hands on any of it. Thank you very much. And so Mars feels a little bit of frustration here. Just a heads up, Mars will be in their detriment in the Venus ruled sign of Libra from now or from this Wednesday until September the 22nd. So, uh, Mars wants to take action, right? They want to get things done. They run on like will and appetite, right? And Libra deals with diplomacy and fairness. Libra, like I said, is a Venus ruled air sign that wants to promote harmony and good vibes. And they want to make people feel at ease and to avoid conflict. However, Mars kind of thrives on conflict and struggle, right? That's what they eat for breakfast. That's what gets them going. And these aspects of Mars kind of get suppressed in Libra, right? Who's like, oh no, don't piss anybody off, right? We've got to find a solution that everybody likes. And this can really frustrate Mars, right? Libra is a sign that's not about conflict, right? Libra is seeking to bring differing ideas or viewpoints into harmony and is looking for mutual satisfaction, right? And the conflict that Mars seeks is not really that welcome in Libra, right? Which wants everybody to be happy and to feel at ease. And Mars is more interested in satisfying their own needs and desires, right? It's not really interested in keeping the peace or keeping the vibe right or making sure that everybody around them is feeling heard or seen or appreciated, right? So, Libra's like, how's everybody doing with this? Oh, let's come to a compromise. Mars is like, yo, I want to get shit done, right? I want to take action. I want to do this. And Libra's like, oh no, but like that's making that person upset, right? And Mars is like, I don't care, right? But Mars is in this zone. So Libra's like, bro, you need to care. And Mars is like, oh, hate caring, right? Want to smash things, right? And that gets sort of suppressed, right? And can like simmer or boil, right? And one of the characteristics or significations of Mars is anger, which again isn't really valued in Libra, which is a sign that's kind of conflict averse, right? And it's a world of fairness and harmony, right? And so in Libra, Mars can get the message that it isn't all right to be angry or to show anger or to hold anger. And so these feelings can be repressed in order to keep the peace or to keep the vibe right or to make other people feel comfortable, right? Because Libra says no one wants to be around the angry guy, right? So like, can you just, turn it down a notch, bro? Right? And so, Mars is sitting there kind of like stewing in this anger and frustration, right? And I just want to name that I think that anger is a really valuable emotion, right? It shows us what we really value and what we care most about, right? We get angry when the things that we love or care for are threatened or treated unfairly, and if you want to take a moment now or whenever, right, and just think about what makes you angry, right? Think about the things that piss you off. And then think about like why that pisses you off, right? Maybe it's the threat to your freedoms, right? Maybe it's the threat to other people's freedom. Maybe it is people that you love and care about being treated unfairly, right? Maybe, it is one of your values, which is not being acknowledged or seen or heard, right? Maybe it's a boundary being crossed, right? So this anger really points the way to what is really vital, what is really alive for us, what is the most important to us, right? It also shows us where our boundaries have been violated, where our safety has been threatened, right? Or where we are made to feel unsafe. And, that can activate that sense of anger and injustice. Right? We get really valuable information from our anger about what's important and our sense of agency and safety in the world. And it can create difficulty if we don't allow ourselves to feel into these places of anger, because we can end up ignoring this vital martial information that it is trying to share with us. We can even go so far as abandoning ourselves to make others feel comfortable. Right? And so Mars will only be ignored for so long, right? Until they end up flipping their lid and exploding. Right? Or Mars's feelings of anger will like smolder under the surface until like backdraft, somebody opens a door and then it's just like boom, right? Right. And in Libra, which is a air sign, which deals with the intellect and communication, right? This sort of martial anger can come out as sarcasm or backhanded compliments, right? Or cutting wit, right? Mars functions as a sword or a shield. And in the air sign of Libra, Mars can cut people off or use their intellect to defend themselves. Mars here can stay in the mind and kind of intellectualize things as a way of protecting themselves and not feeling into the deeper emotions, not feeling into that anger that's like not cool here. So they may use rationalization as a defense against becoming upset or angry or tapping into some of these deeper, more uncomfortable or difficult or not socially acceptable emotions. While this may help to keep the peace, it may not end up helping us in the long run. And so part of Mars's journey through Libra is figuring out that right use of anger, right? Or how to tap into anger or difficult emotions and channel that in skillful ways. Again, Libra is ruled by Venus, right? And so acts of creativity can be really helpful as a way of expressing these sort of more challenging or difficult emotions and moving them through the system, right? Libra is also symbolized by the scales, which is, I believe, the only inanimate object in the zodiac, which is pretty interesting, right? It's a little detached, right? It doesn't have like feelings or emotions, right? It's just there balancing things, right? And one of the things to think about, right, is in Libra, which is interested in balance, to think about what is that right balance in ourselves between holding anger or uncomfortable emotion, right? And how do we bring that into balance with like being in relationship and dealing in social situations and like keeping the vibe right, you know? And so it's we're asked to really focus or observe how that balance is functioning, right? Because if we're just suppressing these uncomfortable emotions or this rage that's kind of simmering beneath the surface because it's not cool to let it out and like, oh, you're making that person feel uncomfortable, right? Like, how do we balance like our feelings and our emotions and what is feeling really alive for us with the vibe? And so this is something to just consider as we move from now until mid-September. Libra, again, symbolized by the scales, is a sign that is seeking justice, right? And Mars, as an action-oriented planet, can be motivated to act in the name of justice. While on one level, Mars in this sign can hold its tongue in order to not rock the boat. On the other hand, or the other pan of the scale, if you will, it can be stirred to act because it's upset about injustice, or it can be moved into action to bring things into justice or to deliver justice or to try and bring things back into balance, right? The things that may have come out of harmony or out of alignment. However, it's important to consider that justice may look different to different people. And while there may be a universal harmony or even a cosmic justice, these principles can be pretty subjective. So what feels just for me may not feel just for you or for somebody else out there. So we may think about Mars as the blade, right? Which has the ability to cut through things or cut things out or cut things off in order to bring the scales back into balance, right? When things have shifted out of alignment, right? And there's maybe like too much weight on one pan of the scales. Sometimes it requires swift and direct action to restore balance, right? And so maybe something needs to be cut off or cut out or removed to bring things back into balance. And one pan of the scale becomes too heavy, Mars can be really helpful in cutting things away or cutting things out so that the scales can be rebalanced. So, moving right along, my friends, uh, on Friday, August the 8th, and just so you know, like most of the week is weighted towards the end of the week, and we've got a full moon in Aquarius, which we'll be talking about in a minute. And also, just a heads up, I forgot to mention this at the onset, but this week is all about Mars. Mars is doing a lot of action this week, and it's all up in the full moon, and it's making aspects to all of the outer planets. So, sort of big things abound, and Mars functions as a trigger, right? So when it passes over a point that has been activated by like an eclipse or a conjunction, it tends to like activate that point. Same thing with transits. As Mars comes into contact with planets or planetary aspects, it can really like bring them to life. It can activate them. It can infuse them with a sense of energy. So we may see some of that this week, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But just a heads up, as Mars moves into their detriment, they start making aspects to Uranus, the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and then Pluto to round out the week. So, like, a lot of like martial stuff happening. So, maybe like do some exercises, do some calisthenics, do some push-ups. This is going to be a really good week for like trying to move that martial energy through the body, right? And trying not just like sitting with it and letting it simmer and stew and being like, I can't let this out because that's going to piss off somebody in the room, right? And we don't want to like show up as like just to like piss people off, right? We want to be aware of what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're saying it, the impact that it has on the community. And this is an Aquarian thing, right? And I'll get to that in a minute as we talk about the Aquarius full moon. However, we also want to find something to do with this martial feeling or the feelings that are activated this week as Mars is transiting all of the outer planets and these sort of like big global archetypal principles. So you may find yourself being activated by the news, right? Or current conditions or social structures. And then your job, my job, our job is to figure out, okay, what do I do with this now? How do I channel this in skillful ways so it doesn't erupt and blow up and like end up destroying something that might be valuable, might be useful, or like getting me in a situation that then I'm going to have to apologize for later and drawing from my energy in order to like make things right and repair the things that are broken. And you know what? If you do this, that's fine because repair is a way that relationships strengthen, right? But like we don't want to do things needlessly. And this is one of the reasons that I do this is to bring some consciousness to the energies and archetypes that we're dealing with throughout the week so that we can show up and be like, okay, I have this feeling, but this wingnut on the TV told me to like think about it, right? And sit with it and figure out a way of using this skillfully so that I don't just like lash out and chew somebody out, right? And tell them like, you're cut out, you're out of here. Right. And maybe that's the right thing to do. Maybe it's not. But like just taking a breath, taking a moment and being like, is this the right thing for me to do in this moment? Anywho, like I was saying, Friday, August the 8th, we have Mars in Libra, trine Uranus in Gemini, and this is a air trine, and it is going down at 1 degree and 7 arc minutes of these air signs. Okay, so Uranus, planet of liberation, freedom, revolution, inspiration, breaking old structures, breaking old barriers, breaking old norms, right? Mars, planet again of action, anger, aggression, desire, right? Willpower. And so this may bring up the drive for new experiences, right? Places that feel stagnant or stuck, right? There might be a desire to like kind of blow them up or like break out of these old structures in order to experience something new or a change or a little bit more freedom, right? Mars trine Uranus may want to take some action to create change. Right? There may be a desire to break out of old routines or to take some action to find more freedom from old structures that might feel a little too confining or limiting, right? Uranus deals with the potential and the idealized vision of how things could or should be. Mars really wants to take action and get stuff done, right? They want to see stuff happen. So in this trine, they are in this harmonious relationship, right? Where these archetypes are linked and kind of working in cahoots. They are collaborating, right? And so Uranus wants to tear down or blow up anything that doesn't reach this idealized vision, anything that feels too limiting or constraining, anything that prevents it from being itself or prevents us from being ourselves and kind of experiencing freedom and authenticity, right? Mars is willing to take action to make that happen. And this is great, right? And again, we want to like think before we act, but I'll get to that in a minute, right? One of the drawbacks of Uranus is it is so focused on upending the old that it may blow up things that are actually working, right? It can get into the like, oh, get rid of this and get rid of that and get rid of that, and it might tear down structures that actually aren't a problem. And doing that might actually create a problem, right? Just because something is old or pre-existing, or just because something doesn't reach an ideal, doesn't mean that it's necessarily worthless, right? Uranus's constant striving for the ideal can leave us dissatisfied with the present moment. Mars again wants to take action and to push towards that ideal. It's like, oh, that's the vision. That's where the grass is greener. Let's go. Right? Get in, losers. We're going to where the grass is greener. Right? So this can be great, but it can also lead us into the sense of craving. Right? And craving is the sense that this moment isn't good enough. What's happening now isn't enough, and I need something else. Right? Can tell us that we're not complete as we are. And if we just had something else or something different or something more, then we would be all right. If we just reached that ideal, if we just got to where the grass was greener, then we would be all right. Right? And it's important to be aware of what's happening in the present because the combo of Mars and Uranus can tell us that what is happening right now isn't good enough, and thus we need to do something to change the state. We need to add something or shift it in some way in order to be okay, in order to get to that idealized vision. And sometimes that actually might be true, right? Sometimes like we are in situations that are not ideal, and we can take actions to shift those, right? And to bring us closer to that idealized vision. But oftentimes, I believe what happens is it prevents us from being truly present, and it pulls us into a sense of craving and dissatisfaction. Because we are no longer present, then we are chasing something that we believe will make it better. We have the story that, oh, if I only had that, or if this was only different, or if that person would only act in this way, or if I had more money, or, blah, 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 then it would be okay. And so, one of the things to be aware of during this transit and during this lunation is what you actually have in the present moment, and can this be okay? Can this be enough? Right? And this doesn't mean abandoning the vision or the ideal, right? But it does require us to be present with what's actually happening now. So again, we can make informed decisions instead of being in this cycle of craving and needing and wanting something else that's different than what we're actually participating in the moment. Hold on. Ooh, Astrology by Moonlight is saying, as a Mars-ruled person with strong Scorpio placements, Qigong has been a life and relationship saver. That's what's up, right? So yeah, if you find physical practices, right, or practices to move energy or chi through your system, this can be incredibly helpful. So these sort of like frustrations don't bubble up, right? And I think part of the frustration is being like, oh, this isn't enough, right? I'm not okay as I am, right? And finding ways of being able to tap into our energy or move it through our bodies, or just be aware of it can help us to recognize maybe I'm okay just as I am. Maybe I'm okay in this moment. And I can still keep my eye on the prize, but I don't need to change or do anything different in this moment. And again, this is that like Libra balance, right? Balancing the future with the present. And so, excuse me. Uranus is a planet of revolution and liberation. Mars, again, planet of action and aggression. So this trine may create some revolutionary energy, which drives us to take action towards change and potentially for justice, which Mars in Libra is kind of justice oriented, right? Or it may motivate us to try and tear down old structures that limit freedom or authentic expression. And this is external structures, but I think that this is also internal structures, right? And I believe that it begins with the internal and radiates outwards instead of trying to change something external to fix ourselves, because that doesn't work too well. Right. So this trine is happening between two air signs, and air signs are about duality. They're about separating things out and analyzing the difference between these two components or these things, right? And it can create this sense that uh, it can create this or that mentalities, right? Me and you, right? Black and white, day and night, blah, 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 right? So Gemini, where Uranus is currently posted up, right? Kind of divides by two and creates a binary, right? This and that. Right? Libra seeks to create a harmonious relationship between the two and find that balance point between them. Right. So Uranus and Gemini also like seeking for new expression and innovation is really looking to move beyond the binary. And I think that's going to be a huge component in Uranus's movement through Gemini over the next 7 years is breaking down these binary structures or revolutionizing the way that we think about binary structures. And this is not just in like gender, right? This is also in computing, right? The binary of 1 and 0, right? This is in all of the binaries that we experience in our life, me and you, right? This and that, right? Uranus is really looking to revolutionize that and break down that rigid structure between A and B or 1 and 0 or this and that or me and you. And to step outside of Uranus is really looking to step outside of these old structures. But we live in a world that is stuck in sort of static definitions of this and that. And Uranus is not trying to have that. Right? It really wants to create a new and innovative framework through which to experience the world. And here, Uranus, or the revolutionary Prometheus, is employing Mars, who's really willing to take action and get stuff done on behalf of this Uranian or Promethean energy in order to break down outdated ways of being and seeing, right? As well as outdated ways of thinking and knowing and communicating. However, it's good to However, it's important to remember that while it's good to break down barriers, right, we don't need to destroy everything around us. Right. And again, Uranus can get a little like Mars and Uranus together can get a little like slap happy and be like, cool, blow this up, blow that up. What about that? Blow that up too, you know? And so we also might see inhibitions break down a little bit, right? While Libra is invested in maintaining the vibe, we may find that we feel a bit more free or a bit more motivated to express ourselves. And again, this is occurring in air signs with which have a lot to do with the intellect and communication. So there may be a drive to speak up or to speak out or to express one's ideas or sense of justice in more unconstrained ways, which I think can be really positive. There also might be more of a desire to take risks, right? And risk taking may feel really good under this transit. Though taking risks and challenging yourself, it might help you to feel like you're breaking out of old patterns. Mars can bring a sense of bravery, which can help us to lean into that discomfort, which allows us to sort of move through, the barriers that have kept us in old patterns, old ways of thinking, old ways of doing, right? So this can help us to really expand the structures that we are living in and help us to forge new paths, right? Mars is the blade that cuts a new path, right? And Uranus is like, we're going over there, right? That's where the grass is greener. And Mars is like, great, pulls out their sword, hacks through the tall grass and creates a path. Right? However, I just want to put this out there that Mars Uranus transits tend to be a little accident prone. So just look before you leap, right? A trine is a supportive aspect, but when these two planets come together and contact each other, there can be increased impulsivity. And while risk taking can be really beneficial, and it may even help you to feel more alive this week, about 3 hours after the Mars Uranus trine perfects, Mars will oppose Saturn, and Saturn brings consequences to our actions, right? And Saturn may bring a reaction to the desire to break down old structures because Saturn is really trying to maintain those structures, right? And while Uranus is like, yeah, blow it up, Saturn's like, hell no, we're holding this down. Right? So while Mars Uranus is supportive and these two archetypes are working together to take action for change, liberation, and freedom, Saturn is about limitation and it's very invested in maintaining the status quo. All right, moving right along to Mars in Libra oppose Saturn retrograde in Aries at 1 degree and 20 arc minutes. What's up, Jeff? Nice to see you, my friend. You beautiful, beautiful human. Welcome on in. So later that day, about 3 hours after the Mars Uranus trine, Mars is coming in to oppose the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is occurring in early Aries. Because Saturn and Neptune are so close together, any aspect to one of them, they are both participating in. So we're going to talk about them kind of individually as well as together as like one entity, because with a conjunction, the energies or archetypes kind of merge together and form kind of like an uber planet, right? Um, and the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune is going to be impacted by Mars, which again functions like a trigger, right? And it can activate latent energies or degrees in the zodiac or aspects between planets as Mars comes to contact them. Mercury is not direct yet. I believe that happens on the 11th, if I remember correctly. It's not in my report, so it's not happening this week. Um, so when Mars passes over or aspects something like the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it can kind of ignite its effects, right? I think about Mars as a spark or a fire that like ignites a fuse that like activates a transit or a charged point in the zodiac. And it can really bring these energies or archetypes to the surface and into our lives. But let's start by talking about Mars's opposition to Saturn just as an individual thing, right? So an opposition is two planets in polarity. They are stuck in this sense of tug of war, right? Each one of them is trying to fulfill their agenda. Here, this tug of war is occurring between the cardinal sign of Aries and Libra, right? So it's a polarity, right? An opposition in the zodiac. Aries is seeking to initiate and ignite. It's about individuality and struggling to create the space for oneself to be, right? To just be who you are. Aries is ruled by Mars and is about acceleration and assertion. On the far side of the zodiac, all the way over there, right? The other side of this tug of war pulling on the rope is Libra, cardinal air sign ruled by Venus. This sign is about relationship and finding the balance and harmony between various people or various principles, right? Where Aries is like, I want to do what I want to do. Libra is like, how do I balance what I want to do with what this other person wants to do, right? Where Aries employs action, Libra utilizes diplomacy. Libra is looking for fairness and is interested in creating balance in the relationship between various aspects or components or people. So we could look at this opposition as a tension between individuality and relationship, or one's individual needs and the needs of the other. Now the planets, right? So we have Saturn and Aries, who is in their fall, right? And Mars, who rules Aries, is in their detriment in Libra. Y'all picking that up? But both of these planets are malefic, right? They're both like kind of angry and difficult, and they're both like pretty extra, right? Neither one of them is very well resourced, and neither one of them is particularly happy, right? Saturn has a really hard time in the Mars ruled sign of Aries, which wants to move fast and break things and figure it out through taking action. Saturn is slow, right? And wants to make things that will withstand the test of time. It moves slowly and deliberately, and it is interested in dedication and not the devil may care, flash in the pan strategies of Aries. Mars, like we said before, wants to take action, but is under resourced in Libra, which really wants to consider how this action will affect everybody else in the situation. Libra is really trying to keep things fair and balanced and harmonious. But Mars, by their nature, really wants to get things done. And it's really hard to get things done when you're like, hey, are you okay with me doing this? Are you cool with me doing this? Right? Mars is like, nah, forget about all that. Right? I'm just going to get it done. I'm just going to do it. Right? Mars wants what it wants when it wants it. But Saturn, right, is the consequences of our actions. It shows us the limitations of our capabilities as well as the limitation of social structures and the structure of reality. If Mars is the gas pedal, Saturn is the brake. And it's really hard to drive by mashing your feet down on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. I don't know if you've ever tried it, it doesn't work. Right? So Saturn really seeks to limit Mars's ability to take action, right? And Mars kicks back against Saturn's limitations. Saturn is like the adult or the elder who wants to do things the way that they've always been done, right? Mars is the youth who wants to do things their way and to innovate and create, right? Especially coming off this trine to Uranus, where Mars is all hepped up on revolution and idealism and wants to break down old structures and to create something totally new. So this tug of war between these two planets can create a lot of frustration, right? And this frustration may turn to anger with the repressive influence of Saturn, right, and Mars in their detriment in Libra. We may have difficulty expressing or channeling this anger, coming back to physical practices or Qigong, right? This anger may not have an obvious outlet or expression, right? It might even be hard to identify in ourselves. So those feelings may stew or even boil over or come out sideways and be taken out on anything that you perceive as blocking your way, right? Whether that's a person or a structure or an institution, right? And whether those things or people like actually deserves your anger or not. And one of the things that happens in an opposition is we project out, right? Oh, that's the thing that's stopping me. Oh, that's the thing that I'm fighting against, right? And part of what we need to do with an opposition, or you don't need to do anything, but what you get to do, you like that, is to recognize, oh, like I'm projecting that out onto that person who's driving slowly in front of me that I perceive as like preventing me from doing what I need to do. How do I like notice that in myself? How do I call that projection back? How do I own that projection, right? How do I make peace with the way things are, right? And with the Mars trying to Uranus, right, the energy of frustration can lead to the desire for rebellion for the sake of rebellion, or action just for the sake of action, just to do something, to shake things up, or to blow off steam. Right? The feeling of not knowing the right action to take. Or Mars and Libra weighing all of their options can lead to a sense of powerlessness, which can increase that sense of frustration, especially in tandem with Mars is trying to Uranus again, which can really motivate us to initiate change and to take action to break away from these old structures, right? These old Saturnian limitations. However, we may not find a way, or we may lack the means or direction on how to do that, where the Saturn structures may feel so solid or daunting that it can be really difficult to find the right way to take action. So it is advisable, again, my friends, not to bottle up your feelings or to suppress your anger or other uncomfortable emotions. It's helpful to find skillful ways of channeling this energy so that these raw emotions don't destabilize you and take you off your game or cause you to lash out. It's good if you can find something in between bottling up your feelings and totally exploding on somebody who may or may not deserve it. Usually the people that we erupt on tend not to deserve it. What something that I've noticed, right? On the flip side, right, Saturn feels pretty rushed to like hold things down or maintain order in Aries. It can have a might makes right story, which causes it to like flex in order to cover up its inadequacies or insecurities. So there's this tension between Mars, which is driven towards action, with the Uranian influence of creating change, and Saturn, who is really trying hard to maintain the status quo by any means necessary. Right? Mars being in the sign of Libra may strive to create some sense of balance, which might be helpful because if we can hold both of these energies skillfully, it can be really beneficial. Saturn helps to keep Mars focused and dedicated enough to follow through with its actions, right? The things that we choose to take action around, Saturn's like, cool, like we're gonna focus on this. We're gonna like get it done, right? Saturn has staying power. Saturn also reminds Mars of the consequence of their actions, which can help Mars act more skillfully instead of just acting on impulse. And this transit can help us to concentrate and focus our energy towards the long-term goal. It can help us to weigh our options on the Libran scale in order to choose a course of action that will provide the intended results. All right, great. Moving right along. to Saturday, August the 9th, which is the full moon in Aquarius, which is happening at 16 degrees and 59 arc minutes of this fixed air sign. This full moon will be occurring very early in the morning at 12:55 a.m. Pacific time, making that 3:55 in the a.m. on the East Coast. And you may want to do your full moon magics or rituals or venerations the night before. Um, and on the night of the 8th. But, that's up to you. So the big story of this full moon is Mars opposing Saturn and Mars opposing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Mars will also be trining Pluto. And, these are not easy things, right? This is Mars, again, like willpower, appetite, desire, motivation, frustration, anger, coming into contact, a hard aspect with Neptune and Saturn, as well as a supportive aspect with Pluto, but Pluto is never easy, right? And this can be kind of challenging. However, we also have a building conjunction between Venus and Jupiter, who are 3 degrees apart during this full moon in Cancer. And we'll be talking about that next week when the conjunction perfects. But I want to give some good news because this is a great kind of resource point, right? This is a conjunction that's developing between the two benefic planets. And that reminds us of the gift of care and joy and pleasure. Even as we're dealing with all the tension and frustration and struggle that is coming up during the Mars opposition to Saturn, Neptune, and they're trying to Pluto and Uranus during this full moon, Jupiter and Venus in Cancer remind us to care for the parts of ourselves that may become activated this week. The frustrated part, the part that holds grief about the state of the world, the part that holds anger because things that we value or people that we love feel threatened, right? The part that feels sadness or disappointment around the failures of systems or our inability to do anything about it, right? And just being able to notice what arises and just practicing offering care to these places that hold these big emotions instead of projecting them out onto other people and making them the enemy. We can ask these parts of ourselves what they need in this moment to feel okay. And also what they are trying to show us, or trying to help us to understand in order to know them better. And this goes for the people in our lives as well. Venus and Jupiter are pretty social, right? And in Cancer, this is all about care and increasing our protective shell, right? Not making it thicker, but like increasing its size, expanding its size, so that we can welcome those that we care for into the safety of that Cancerian shell. So thinking about what creates that sense of emotional safety and how we can expand that to include who and what we really care for. And lastly, when Venus and Jupiter get together, they like to have a really good time, right? They like to eat and drink and feast and feel good. Right? With Jupiter, we want to watch out for overindulgence, and with Venus, we want to watch out for laziness. But keeping these things in mind, this is a good time to lean into joy. And joy and pleasures, these are ways that we can care for ourselves. Delighting our senses is a way that we can show ourselves love, right? And this is not in a hedonistic way or a disassociative or a checking out kind of way, right? But a way in which spreads joy throughout ourselves, right? And throughout our systems, which allows us to help resource those that we welcome in, right? And come in contact with. And to spread that sense of joy and ease with the people that we're in relationship with. Because Jupiter and Venus coming together, even all this chaos, says that it can be easy and it can feel good. And there is nothing wrong with feeling good amidst the chaos, because this is a way of resourcing ourselves, right? There can be a lot of shame around being like, oh, I'm enjoying myself when there's so much suffering in the world. But your suffering doesn't help the suffering of other people, right? And I think that joy emanates outward, right? And when we can experience joy, and not in like a cutoff or disassociative or hedonistic way, or not in a way that like ignores the very real pain and suffering in the world, right? But when we can experience joy, then we are more capable of sharing that with other people, and that joy spreads outwards. And it's much better than spreading misery, right? Or anger or aggression. But that's just my opinion. Okay, now that we got some good news, back to Mars and Saturn. Mars opposing Saturn and Neptune during this full moon. So Mars rules Aries, where Saturn is currently residing, right? And Saturn rules Aquarius, where the moon is during this lunation. Right? Aquarius is about the structure and everything beyond the structure, everything outside the walls of that structure. It deals with the outcast and the rebel, those who are outside of the system. And those who are outside of the system have the gift of perspective. They can observe the way a system or structure functions from a more objective place, and they can offer insight into how things might be improved, which is really valuable, right? And it's very difficult to be able to see in this way when one is living inside of the structure, because all we can see is the walls around us. But when we get on a mountaintop outside of the city, we can look down and be like, oh, that traffic pattern's messed up there, right? And if we just rerouted this road a little bit or put a traffic light there or a yield sign, like maybe that would make things better. But, when you're just stuck in traffic, that's all you can see. Aquarius is another air sign, right? And is looking at how to bring the reality in line with the ideal, right? It separates reality from ideal and is trying to figure out ways of integrating these, right? Uh, so as an air sign, right, this is the duality that Aquarius is dealing with, the duality between how things are and how they could be. With the full moon, we are also dealing with an opposition, right? It is the moon opposing the sun, right? So the tension there, that tug of war there. We're dealing with the polarity, the solar principle and the lunar principle, as well as the polarity between Leo, where the sun is currently hanging out, sign of its rulership, feeling pretty good there, and Aquarius, where the moon is located. Leo deals with the unique qualities of oneself, what makes us special and sets us apart from others, and the creative expression of our individuality. Aquarius deals with the collective, where individuals go to assimilate, where Leo is the unique and beautiful snowflake, right? Aquarius is the blizzard or the snowbank, where all of these unique snowflakes come together to form a critical mass. And that sense of individuality becomes overshadowed by the whole. And this is the tension that this polarity brings up, which is highlighted by this lunation. What is my individual contribution to the whole? How can I be a part of the larger collective without completely losing myself or my individual identity? What adjustments can I make or do I need to make in order to be part of this larger group? And how do I maintain my sense of self as I join the group? How can I shine my light into this larger collective in a way that will enhance and contribute to the whole? Every group or system is composed entirely of individuals, right, who each have an opportunity to contribute their gifts to benefit the collective. The trick here is being able to offer that, right, those gifts without losing oneself. So during this full moon, we have Mars opposing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which, like I said before, may be triggering some of the themes of this conjunction. We've been talking about we've been talking about oppositions throughout this report, right? And the tug of war that is created by the polarity of the opposition, right? And again, it can also be a space of projection where we find ourselves in one area of the opposition, and the other polarity becomes outsourced, right, or projected onto some force or external entity. So it is really helpful to notice what role we find ourselves in and what we are projecting outwards. If we can recognize what we're doing and become conscious of it, then we have the opportunity to reclaim these projections and to work with them instead of going into blame or frustration because other people are just not doing what we want them to. With a conjunction, we get the merging of two archetypes, right? The energies of the two planets, in this case, Saturn and Neptune, come together and sort of assimilate in some ways. and form an almost hybrid where their characteristics become blended. With Mars in opposition to this conjunction, it may be creating some activation around the union of Saturn and Neptune. This can be themes of structures or boundaries dissolving. This can be borders shifting, like the tides are being swept away entirely, or various other boundaries dissolving or needing to change, right? It's also the tension between or breaking down of the line between illusion and reality. Saturn is a planet of reality, and Neptune is about fantasy. So, what happens when fantasy and reality intermingle, right? It gets really weird. And I think that, like, we're living in a very weird and pretty surreal time, right? And questions may arise around how can we hold this bigger vision and also like fit it into this physical reality? And what might need to change about either the vision or the physical reality in order to make these things coexist? So there may be a desire to go too far into the dream or the illusion and just check out from reality, or to go too far into the cold, hard facts and cling only to what can be measured, what we can see with our eyes or touch with our hands. So what happens when the literal and the imaginal become merged? What happens to our facts and fantasies? What happens to our reality? What happens to our dreams? Right? What happens when these archetype of dream and reality are dancing together and then they become activated by the opposition to Mars? We'll see, but I think I'm very curious to see what unfolds throughout this week. Um, but I imagine some of these themes are going to come to the surface during this full moon, and we may even witness them in ourselves and project it out into the world. But pay attention to that point of projection, my friends, and see if you can notice the places where you're trying to like outsource things onto others, right? And for extra credit, you can see if you can claw back some of those projections and try and own them or work with them in some way instead of like blaming this person or that system and being like, okay, what in me is being activated here? What am I witnessing in that system or that other person that actually lives within me, and how can I work with that? All right. Almost done. Thanks for sticking with me, my friends. So later that day, during the full moon day, during Saturday, we have Mars and Libra opposing Neptune retrograde in Aries. This is at 1 degree and 50 arc minutes. So I've just been talking about like Mars opposing the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and now let's talk about Mars making its perfecting its opposition to Neptune. So Mars is our willpower, motivation to act. It deals with appetite and desire, that which drives us and moves us. Neptune is dissolving, and it can drain that willpower and that drive right out of Mars, especially with the combination of Saturn here, right? Saturn can cock block Mars. And with Mars feeling stuck, Neptune can just wash that martial energy away, leaving us feeling frustrated or low energy, which is not really a great feeling, right? It can lead to feelings of inadequacy, right? And it really sucks feeling low energy. I always have this story, right, that it's always going to be like this, right? Or that I'm a failure, right? Feeling like can't do or accomplish the things that I want to. And again, this is coming off the trine to Uranus, which creates a lot of motivation to take action for change. And then we hit this block to Saturn and run out of steam, right? Neptune just washes all that away. Neptune is also deceptive, right? We may be deceived as to where to direct that vital martial energy. Neptune can get us caught up in the illusion, and we might find that we're swept away by some fantastical thinking about what we should do with our Mars energy, or the anger that has been building under the surface, right? Neptune, Mars kind of makes me think about the rage machine, right, of the media, which is the media is an incredibly Neptunian thing, right? And the media gets people activated and like spins them out into these fantasies of danger, right? And Mars might not have a clear sense of where to direct that activation or how to move it skillfully through the system. So again, this is something to practice this week. So the media and politicians and social media, right, may try to direct those feelings of activation for you, right? And again, this is occurring during the Aquarius full moon with themes of the individual and the individual's role in the collective being highlighted. So we may find our energy or our rage being swept up or swept away by a larger agenda or ideology. So just pay attention and be aware of that, right? Don't let the feelings of activation or disappointment or anger cloud your judgment, right? And this is where Saturn can be really helpful. They can bring us back down to earth and help us to recognize what's actually happening, right? So we don't spin out into some rage-filled revenge fantasy or get lost in an illusion. Right? And again, one illusion that I come up with is I don't have any energy and it's always going to be like this and I'm incapable, right? Which goes quickly into I'm bad or I'm a failure. And that's, for me, that's just a story, right? I mean, it's a very real feeling in the moment, but like that's just a story that I tell myself to make sense of the feeling that I'm having. And if we can check in with our, with these sensitive parts that are maybe, if we can check in with our Saturn parts that are maybe more tethered to reality, we can realize that this is passing instead of beating up on ourselves and thinking about, how much of a failure I am. We can think about the ways that we can really care for ourselves, right? Which is Venus and Jupiter in Cancer during the full moon. And the most skillful ways that we can direct the energy that we do have. Okay? Neptune can also be intoxication, and there can be a desire to check out or manage feelings of anger or disappointment through drugs or alcohol or other behaviors like that. Right. And, you do you and just do what you got to do. But again, consider if this is the most skillful way to manage that energy. Are there other ways of processing these feelings that allow you to stay present with them? We are much more capable of taking right action when we're not intoxicated, right? Mars deals with courage and bravery, and being able to be with what arises in this life requires a degree of bravery. And as we practice that quality, it builds. And so just remember that as you sit with what arises and find skillful ways of working with it or through it, it helps to develop our courage and our capacity to do difficult things and to show up more fully for ourselves and for others. Which brings us to the last transit of the week. Sunday, August the 10th, we have Mars in Libra, trine Pluto in Aquarius at 2 degrees and 12 arc minutes of these air signs. And this is rounding out Mars's Grand Prix of all of the outer planets this week. Whew, it's intense. So this is the last transit of the week, and it's definitely active during the full moon. So similar to the Mars-Uranus trine, Mars' trine to Pluto wants to take action to create change, right? It may make us feel kind of ambitious and motivate us to take action that can initiate transformation. I believe this process is best begun on an internal level and recognizing what might need to change in the self in order to create change in the external world, right? Coming back to the projections of the Mars opposition to Neptune and Saturn, there can be a lot of outsourcing onto like other people or institutions or situations or systems being like, that's the problem. I'm not the problem. There's no problem here. That's the problem out there. And real talk, these things probably are problems, right? I'm not trying to minimize that. But what do we need to change or rework or transform in our inner world to best deal with these external issues, right? And we probably have more agency to transform something in ourselves than we do in like social services or healthcare structures or so Mercury Gatorade just ate the last quarter of my wizard report, so I'm gonna pick it up from where I left off, and hopefully it'll be seamless and you'll never notice. So, like I was saying, right, we're talking about calling back our projections and to really think about what we need to change or rework or transform in our inner world to be able to deal with the external issues that are presented to us, things like governmental systems, healthcare structures, social services, bureaucracy, what our bosses or teachers or coworkers are doing. All of these things we have very little control over. right? So, how do we call back these projections to come into a relationship with them? And in doing so, how do we come into a better relationship with ourselves and recognize where we actually have agency and control in our lives, right? So we can take some ownership of these feelings and begin to rework the stories and the old operating systems that are really running the show at an unconscious level. And when we are able to come into awareness like that, it gives us access to agency. And through that, I think it grants us a sense of power, right? And Pluto deals with power. And this is an opportunity to notice, recognize, and to come into relationship with our personal power and how we utilize that and use it in our lives. And again, coming back to the theme of the Aquarius full moon, right, to think about how do we use our personal power for the good of the collective, right? And the Aquarius full moon, the Aquarius and Leo polarity, the individual, right, and how the individual shares their gifts with the larger community or the larger whole. Instead of just seeking to wield power or have power over others, which it just replicates toxic systems that we are existing in. This also gives us a chance to understand what motivates us and the unconscious forces that drive us to act or to desire or to crave. When we can understand where these urges or motivations come from or what they are attached to, we can act from a more conscious place and make better informed decisions about what we're doing, right? When we are stirred to act, we can ask ourselves, do I actually want to do this thing because I actually want to, or because I don't want to be present with myself, and I think that this will distract me from the discomfort of sitting with myself. As we come into a greater understanding of what is actually driving us, we have more agency to make choices in our lives about how we use our vital energy and where we direct it through our actions. And this, my friends, is power. And this is freedom. Pluto is about transformation. And with this trine to Mars, there's the opportunity to take action that can facilitate transformation. But this often requires that something is shed or laid to rest in order to create more space for the new to be born and to come into fruition. We can also think about what might need to be cut away or laid to rest in ourselves and able to facilitate this transformation and to step into a new sense of self or to gain access to a new sense of personal power. In closing, this transit makes me think about the Sumerian myth of Nergal and his descent into the underworld to meet Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. Right? Ereshkigal is, like I said, the queen of the underworld. My girl, love her. And Nergal, who is a martial character, right, associated with the planet Mars in their pantheon, disrespects her and is sent to the underworld to apologize. Enki tells Nergal when he goes down to the underworld not to drink anything or eat anything. And this is real good underworld advice. If you are ever going through the underworld, don't eat or drink anything because you'll be stuck there. Right. And Enki says, oh, one last thing, just like Columbo. One more thing. Right. Whatever you do, don't sleep with her. And Nergal is like, yeah, wasn't planning on it. No problem. Don't eat, don't drink, don't even sit, don't sleep with her. I'm going down there. So Nergal takes heads down to the underworld and he takes 14 demons with him to hold open the gates of the underworld so he doesn't get trapped there, just in case he needs to get out of there and make a quick exit, right? He's thinking ahead. So he gets down there into Ereshkigal's realm, passes the seven gates with the 14, gets his 14 buddies to hold them open for him. And he shows up there and he's like, hey, Ereshkigal. And he makes a pretty empty apology. So I'm sorry that you felt bad about something that I might have done. Like, yeah, real sorry about that. Okay, we good now? And Ereshkigal offers him food, offers him drink, offers him a place to sit, right? But Nergal refuses. He thinks he knows better. And then Ereshkigal's like, okay, whatever, bro. I'm just gonna go take my bath. And she begins to disrobe, right? And Nergal instantly is smitten and he can't resist her underworld demon charms. And they end up in bed for 7 days and 6 nights. But on the seventh night, on the seventh night, Nergal kind of freaks out a little bit, realizes he's catching some feelings, and he sneaks out of bed and runs out of the underworld and hides in the palace of the gods. Ereshkigal wakes up and is like, "Oh, hell no! I'm sick of living alone down in this hellhole. Send that man back to me." Right? And she sends her advisor up to go find him. But Nergal is hiding and cowering, right? And tells everybody, "Yo, if somebody comes up here from the underworld, just say that you haven't seen me," right? And he's like hiding in the corner. Ereshkigal's advisor, her buddy, comes back and is like, "Yo, I didn't find him anywhere." And she's like, I am not having that." And she sort of flips her lid a little bit and she threatens to unleash the dead upon the earth unless he is returned. And the gods are like, "Nah, that's a bad plan. We're gonna find this dude and send him back." And so they do. And Nergal kind of is convinced to come back into the underworld and meets up with Ereshkigal. And long story short, they are married and they complete the initiation and ritual of making love for 7 days and 7 nights. And so Nergal ends up reigning with Ereshkigal and has a partnership as one of the rulers of the underworld. And he gains access to all of this underworld power, all of this power from the unconscious. It just required him to develop the courage to stick with it and to not run away when the feelings started to get big, right? Or when he started to feel threatened. And it required him to like have the courage to lean in and not check out or abandon the opportunity that was offered to him. And so I bring in this story just to close this out because, I like to bring in a story. And also because Nergal is this strong, brave warrior who is ready for action. But when faced with the power of the underworld, the power of the unconscious, he turns tail and runs and needs to be called back to finish this initiation into power. And by the way, Pluto is a planet of initiation, right? And gives us access to power through transformation, but we have to be initiated into this. And this is one of the reasons that Pluto is very difficult because initiation is not easy. Sometimes it requires you to spend some time in the underworld with a chthonic deity, right? To be able to go through that transformation process. Right. Ereshkigal, who presides over the realm of the underworld, represents all of these unloved parts of ourselves that are relegated to the hell realms or to the underworld. Right. So Nergal and Ereshkigal really need each other. Nergal needs to access real courage to face these darker parts of the self and to access real power. And Ereshkigal needs to be seen and loved so that she can initiate this warrior into the power of the unconscious and share it with the part that has the real ability to take conscious action in the world and not just be continually operating on the ghosts that live in the shadow realm of the underworld. And with that, my friends, we come to the end of our tale and the end of this week's Wizard Report. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your attention. And yeah, thanks for checking this out. If you liked it, I don't know, like, subscribe, share, do the things that all of the other people tell you to do. I don't really know how to do this, but I trust that if there are people that you think might enjoy this or benefit from it in some way, I would urge you to pass it along to them. And if you'd like to follow along with my weekly wizard updates, I guess subscribe. Like it. I don't know. It's nice to hear. It's nice to feel like this is going someplace or is having some effect or impact in some small way. So yeah. Also, I'm available for tarot and astrology readings. I also do astrology themed coaching. If you're interested in any of these services, you can find me on my website, Camp Wizard Camp. Just shoot me an email through there, or you can find me on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard. And this also comes out as a podcast if you don't want to look at this beautiful background. or my beautiful sport coats. You can always just listen to it. You can find it on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts at This Week in Space with three exclamation points, not to be confused with This Week in Space with zero exclamation points. And they're not very excited about This Week in Space now, are they? Also, yeah, again, I'm going to be running a retreat in Greece with the brilliant and talented Sarah Janes. That's going down September 20th through 27th. We'll be talking about the autumnal equinox as well as dream work and the element of water. I will put a link to the website in the show notes if you want to check that out. Just click on that, go to the retreat page, and that should have all the information that you need to figure out what we're doing and to sign up. I think that there are one or two spaces left. So if you're interested, I would recommend hitting that up quickly. And yeah, other than that, yeah, I got a Patreon, which is a great way to support this ongoing and ever evolving project, process, practice, whatever we're doing here. And that I also put out content like tarot readings and guided meditations for the full and new moon, as well as sometimes when I have enough time, I like to do a astrology themed radio show, which I've been taking kind of a break on, but that should be back in action as the summer winds down. Yeah, and I guess that is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Oh, you can find the Patreon. You can find me on Patreon at Camp Wizard Camp at patreon.com. All right, now that is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you all so much for tuning in and checking this out. Hopefully, this all comes together seamlessly. And I wish you all a great week in space. And I'll see you all next time, same wizard channel. And until then, my friends, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. And as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.